Okay, this video is called 5 Vegan Myths Debunked. Here's Bruce Lee, and he's fighting a bunch of other guys. One of the things you'll notice, Bruce Lee is very skinny, and everybody he's fighting is very skinny. The Chinese, up until around 1975, the vast majority of their calories from white rice, up to 90%, and everybody was skinny. People who had traveled there said you couldn't find an obese person. There's only one exception to that basic rule of show me a rice eater and I'll show you a skinny person. We got Bolo, and I think Bolo was taking steroids, okay? Look at Bruce Lee, he's incredible, okay. So, show me a rice eater, I'll show you a skinny person. Here's the same thing. This is a photograph of Japanese men from the 1960s, and they're all skinny, okay? Now here is Papua New Guinea. In Papua New Guinea, they were eating 93% of their calories from sweet potatoes. And this photograph was taken a little later because, you know, it's in color. But still, the men were very skinny, energetic, muscular, did a lot of manual labor. And they had good physical fitness. Okay, here is Dr. McDougall talking about him. He lists Papua New Guinea population as eating 90% of calories from sweet potatoes. I've seen other papers saying they ate 93% or 92% of their calories from sweet potatoes. Their diet led them to be eating carbohydrate for about 95% of their calories. Because sweet potatoes have only 1% of calories from fat, and they have about 4.5% of calories from protein. So that's a very low protein diet. Look at this, only 25 grams of protein for men per day. And if you do the math on that, look at the math on that. Let's say you take an average body weight of 150 pounds or so, 175 pounds, and they're only eating 25 grams of protein. That's very, very low. That's in the ballpark of about 0.3 grams per kilogram per day. Okay, it's as low as it gets. It's like a renal failure protection diet for the kidneys. But despite that, they're very physically strong, robust, and energetic. Their average total cholesterol about 153, surprisingly high given this diet. Let's see what else. Triglycerides, reasonable. They don't have high uric acid. No diabetes or gout at all. Hypertension was very rare. Some of them smoke cigarettes, though. Significant number of them smoke cigarettes. That could cause problems. And I know that's a confounding variable that can make people skinny, too. But in other populations that eat potatoes, like in Peru, for example, the people are very skinny. So anyways, sweet potatoes are considered by a lot of people as the healthiest food in the world because it's a starch, meaning complex carbohydrates. It's a plant food that's basically a polymer of glucose. And, you know, initially the glucose is wrapped in fiber, so it's low caloric density, stretches the stomach, early satisfaction of hunger. The intestines have to peel that fiber off before it's absorbed into the blood. I'm showing you all these pictures first so that when I go into debunking the myths, things will make sense. And then you get the effect of a slow-release energy pill essentially from eating complex carbohydrates in the form of starches. And that's why they're the best food in the world to satisfy hunger, because you satisfy your hunger with the fewest number of calories. Okay, here is Dan Buettner in the Blue Zones. When he first started writing about the Blue Zones, he's a National Geographic researcher, writer. They went and studied what populations are the healthiest people in the world in terms of having the most people who make it into their 90s or 100s and are still healthy. And they came up with these 5 areas. All of them are sort of, backward-ass podunk places, other than Loma Linda, which is a suburb of Los Angeles in California, where the Seventh-day Adventists eat, and it's part of their religion to be vegetarian. Some of them are vegans. The ones who are vegans live longest out of all the Seventh-day Adventists. Okay, now we're going to start getting into debunking the myths. First of all, myth number 1, that carbs make you fat. And the reality is the high carbohydrate diet people are the skinniest people in the world and the healthiest. Like I said, show me a rice eater and I'll show you a skinny person. You go to China, Japan, and some of these other Asian countries, back when they ate primarily rice diets, and 1 billion out of 1 billion were skinny. Okay, complex carbohydrates are starch, which is basically a polymer of glucose wrapped in fiber. CHO is abbreviation for carbohydrate. And I talked about the Bruce Lee movies. Look at the Vietnam War movies, the old ones. All the extras are skinny. Vietnam soldiers in the Vietnam War, they would just carry rice and water on them. Dr. McDougall, by the way, is the best doctor who ever lived. Look what he says. He says, all large, healthy populations eat a starch-based diet. There are no exceptions. If you look at it closely, you'll see that's the case. I know a lot of people love fruits, and fruits can be very healthy, but there's no big population that is fruitarian. Okay, a lot of times there's seasonal availability issues with fruits. Myth number 2, calcium in milk prevents osteoporosis. It's actually quite the opposite. Who gets osteoporosis? Little old white ladies who drink milk, okay? Milk increases osteoporosis because animal protein is acidic. It's acidic because it has more methionine, and methionine is a sulfur-containing amino acid that gets in part converted to sulfuric acid, causing a metabolic acidosis. Okay, then the body has to buffer that acid, the pH, and the kidney is the master regulator of pH. It simultaneously excretes the acid, the protons, which is a H+, while that is coupled to excreting calcium. And the calcium has to come from somewhere. Well, the calcium comes from the bones and from the muscles, and the calcium is excreted into the urine. So what I'm saying is, when you eat animal protein, your body has to excrete the acid, and it does so by coupling that excretion to calcium. And you take that calcium from your bones and from your muscles. So it has a negative effect on the bones, causing osteoporosis, and it'll also have a bit of a muscle wasting effect. The muscle wasting effect is a little bit counteracted by certain other things. We're not going to get into that now. But Bantus, by the way, the Bantus are the black women in South Africa. And they would typically have 10 babies, nurse them for 3 years. That's a lot of milk going to the baby, breast milk, calcium, and they have a very low calcium intake, but they don't get osteoporosis. So the point is, calcium intake is not the issue with osteoporosis. The issue is animal protein. It's the populations that eat a lot of animal protein who get the most osteoporosis. And the Eskimos, Inuits, they got tons of severe osteoporosis because they eat too much animal protein in their diet. It's not a healthy diet. Okay, myth number 3, the vegan diet lowers energy levels. It's quite the opposite. Upon changing to a vegan diet, many people start running 10K or marathons. There's a real famous vegan doctor by the name of Garth Davis. He's a bariatric surgeon as well. And he's a rather typical example. He himself was fat and tired and having trouble going upstairs. He became a vegan, then he started running triathlons. That's well known. There's a lot of famous vegan marathon or triathlon people. Ruth Heidrich, PhD lady, is another good example. She had breast cancer, metastatic breast cancer, and she became 100% vegan, ran triathlons, and she's still alive over 40 years later. The low-fat vegan diet has been shown to increase VO2 max, and there's an obvious reason why. When you eat high-fat diets, your red blood cells get stuck together. That's called blood sludge, because the elevation in LDL cholesterol, for example, it's a bridging molecule. It overcomes the zeta potential, the negative charge on the outer surface of red blood cells. It has positive charge, and it sticks them together. And then when your blood becomes thickened, increased viscosity of the blood, it's less able to deliver oxygen as it travels through the capillaries. Because a red blood cell, to begin with, is bigger than a capillary. It has a diameter of about 7 microns, capillary about 5 microns. So it's even a worse situation when you stick them all together like a giant submarine sandwich trying to travel through a capillary. It just can't effectively deliver its oxygen. And in addition, the high-fat meals and the blood being stuck together, when you pump thick blood, that raises blood pressure. You get hypertension. Hypertension is the main risk factor for atherosclerosis. The other major risk factors include high cholesterol. It causes that. Another major risk factor for atherosclerosis is diabetes. Well, the saturated fat in all meat, that's basically animal fat, that also is the major cause of insulin resistance and diabetes. So all of those things contribute to decreased oxygen delivery to tissues, which means less energy. Okay? Myth number 4. Energy, everyone should just eat for their type. Some do better with meat diet, others with plants. That's a bunch of nonsense. There are some very, very rare medical conditions like refractory epilepsy, where in those special circumstances, not responding to medications, you might want to eat a high-fat diet like a keto diet to slow down the brain and decrease the risk of seizures if they have a congenital brain abnormality that predisposes to seizures that have not responded to medication. But a normal person, otherwise healthy, they don't want to slow down their brain, okay? It's going to slow down your cognitive function. It's notorious that epilepsy drugs lower IQ. They slow down cognitive function. Okay, so that special circumstance, as a way to avoid surgery for their epilepsy, they might want to go the keto diet. But for almost everyone else, you don't want to do that. Okay, and people, we basically all have the same biochemical pathways inside our body. There's a tiny bit of variation due to genetics, but that's a minor thing. Any population that eats the high-fat diets, they plug up their arteries and have problems from that. Okay, I made several videos about blood flow and bridging molecules. The video at Dr. McDougall's Medical Center on high-fat meal and blood sludge is really good. I'll put a link to that below in the description. Okay, myth number 5, that soy is good for you. As far as I'm concerned, soy is like a litmus test to see if somebody's a bullshit artist, all right? Soy, there's lots of papers about all the problems with soy in the past before it became a billion-dollar commercial product. Now that it's a billion-dollar commercial product, industry funds all these papers trying to say that soy is some type of magic food. It's BS. Okay, soy is usually not organic. It's usually sprayed with atrazine. Atrazine is a powerful chemical. It is the chemical that the research at Tyrone Hayes has shown turns male frogs into female frogs. Not good. Very, very, very estrogenic. Just another thing feminizing the population nowadays. Atrazine is a mitochondrial inhibitor. Not good. You need your mitochondria to make ATP, to make energy for your cells, to make energy for your body. So that is not good. Soy itself is intrinsically highly estrogenic, and it does activate both the good and the bad estrogen receptors. A lot of people try to say it only activates the good estrogen receptors to maintain bone mass. It doesn't activate the other estrogen receptors to, like the alpha receptors, to, accentuate the secondary sex characteristics. Oh, yes, it does. Take a look at the Stefan Mueller paper. You see that it activated them in similar amounts, both of them. Okay, the relevance is that soy can distort the female reproductive tract and interfere with fertility in women. All right. One other thing is soy is often processed with hexane. Hexane is a neurotoxin, a brain toxin. All right. Soy itself is a high-fat food. High-fat foods increase the risk of obesity, and obesity increases the risk of diabetes and hypertension. Not good. And people say, well, what about the Asians? They ate a lot of soy. They ate tiny amounts of soy, and it was locally grown in their backyard, not this modern processed stuff. Okay, soy lowers sperm count. So soy lowers sperm counts. I already mentioned that it's damaging to the female reproductive tract in some studies. So what do I think of soy? I think the reason why soy plants, last time I looked at a soy plant, it did not have any breasts and it did not have a Virginia down below. So you know what? I don't think it needs the estrogenic chemicals for itself, okay? I believe it used them as pesticides for insects that would eat them, and now they're in a sense a pesticide for humans. If you have an animal that's eating you and you don't want to be eaten, you can make that animal infertile, and maybe the problem will go away. Soy is not only damaging to reproduction for the animal that eats soy, it is also goitrogenic, meaning it has a negative effect upon thyroid function, can lower your energy level. So what am I trying to say here? I think soy is for chumps. Soy is part of the whole big strategy to sterilize the you-know-who, the pros, okay? Just like F- and AL in your municipal tap water, you chumps.